Thank you so much to everyone who subscribed yesterday. I told you we got to get to the next milestone. Was it 34,000, Jack? 34,000 subscribers. We need 292. And I asked you guys yesterday, got 56 subscribers. So keeping the momentum going. We're going to keep doing shows. So can we get 30 subscribers today? Got to keep that average going into the weekend, into next week. Must hit 34,000. So the bosses, the big bad bosses here at Jet Sports said something bad's going to happen. All right, maybe just be karma if we don't get 30 today. So subscribe. We're going to keep doing Michigan football videos all spring long, into the summer, into the season, based on the vibes that you guys are giving by supporting. And speaking of spring practice, announcement has been made just moments before we start filming today's show here on a Thursday. Michigan has announced its spring practice dates, beginning dates, and that 2025 Michigan football spring game at the Big House. We'll tell you about that in just one moment. It is the Michigan Football Report with James Yoder. We got young Harbaugh, Jack Latteray, after a one-day hiatus, back with us. We'll get going right now. Jack, some people in the comments yesterday boycotting the show if Jack does not return. So glad that you are here. I was thinking about leaving us for another show, but we had to put our foot down and make sure we brought him back here on a Thursday. So spring practice getting kicked off. It's year 2 of Sherrone Moore. Is it year 1 of Bryce Underwood being the starting quarterback? We're going to find out soon because spring practice gets underway a month from tomorrow. Frankly, because the 28 days of February, 4 weeks from tomorrow. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Don't forget, Jack. Don't forget, you guys. I almost forgot myself. I haven't got anything. I have no plans. I have nothing. I'll probably go to Whole Foods and buy like a $12 bouquet of flowers and call it a day. Michigan is always going to get 15 spring practices this year, which does include the spring game. So spring game is going to be noon on April 19th on a Saturday. I'm sure it's going to be held on at least Big Ten Network. But if you remember, I think it was last year, right? Maybe the year before, but definitely last year. Fox, like National Fox, the main Fox broadcast, put the Michigan and Ohio State spring games on the big Fox channel, not some like FS1, not Big Ten Network or anything like that. So from the 14th to 19th, you got roughly that's 5 weeks, and Michigan will fit in 15 practices. So probably expect 3 padded practices per week, and they're going to stretch that bad boy out. Probably be some informal stuff in there. Also, some news that dumped this afternoon: Michigan has 8 players headed to the NFL Combine, which is about 2 weeks away. Last year, they set a record with 18 players. This year, 8 more. So if you combine those two, all these guys were on the national championship team, right? Yes, they were. So 26 players from last year's national champion make the Combine over a 2-year stretch. On offense, it's Don, it's Caleb Mullings, Colson Loveland, and Miles Hinton. I think 3 of those 4 guys, I think are going to be lucky to get drafted before maybe the 5th or 6th round, if maybe at all. In Hinton's case, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, all first-rounders. Josiah Stewart has been mocked as a first-rounder in a handful as well, so keep an eye out for that. We're going to have a ton of coverage. Still haven't got any approval or update from the NFL, but we should have some folks out there from Chat Sports, so we'll get interviews with all of those guys. We'll put it right here on the channel. But what I want to talk about today is I hacked Sherrone Moore's email. We bugged his office, and we have got the leak. It was crumpled up. I paid off the janitor. It was in the trash can, uncrumpled it. We have got, from good sources, the spring expected depth chart on day 1 of practice. We're going to give it to you here right now. Your QB1, it's not Bryce Underwood, but I don't expect that to last forever. Mikey Keene is going to be the QB1, maybe QB1A, and Underwood will be 1B. And, of course, Underwood's going to give every opportunity to win that job through spring, through fall. And, frankly, if he doesn't win it by at least the 4th or 5th game, I think, alarm bells need to go off. But Mikey Keene has started at multiple schools, right? He started at UCF. He went to Fresno State. He started a couple years there. He threw almost 3,000 yards last year. He threw for a couple hundred yards against Michigan in a touchdown, was intercepted by 2 guys, including Will Johnson, for a pick 6, but kept Fresno right in that game in the season opener last year, and it's exactly what Michigan needed to bring in. You've got now this year at the quarterback position, you've got the number 1 player in the country, Bryce Underwood. I think, frankly, for what my money's worth, as far as hype and hoopla and size, I really honestly think that he is the most anticipated freshman coming in college football since maybe you could say Trevor Lawrence, but prior to that, maybe Vince Young back in like 2002, and even he redshirted and then kind of split snaps for a year before starting his third and fourth year at Texas, leading them the national title. Went pro, didn't stick around for his fifth year. But last year, you think about it, you had maybe Jadyn Davis will come in and do something, but Alex Orji, and he had Jack Tuttle, a 25-year-old, and Davis Warren, a guy who hadn't played in a football game since 2019 because he got sick, had cancer, canceled season, and then really didn't play much, a few snaps here and there for Michigan. I shouldn't say played, started in the game. This year, you're going to have a guy who started parts of 3 and 4 seasons in Mikey Keene at the quarterback position. At the high level, played some really good games against quality opponents. I think he beat Florida when he was a starter at UCF that one year. I think we talked about that a while back, Jack. You got the number 1 recruit in the country. You got a 4-star, 6-star in our book in Jadyn Davis. And then you've got the guy in as a freshman, the guy in Davis Warren, who went into Columbus and beat Ohio State again, was the starting quarterback when Michigan beat Alabama, although Alex Orji, who's now at UNLV, was the quarterback for the rest of the year. So you've got to be feeling great about this quarterback room compared to last year. Still obviously not anywhere near just the J.J. McCarthy era, just based on McCarthy alone. But I think overall, you've got 3 guys, and maybe 4, depending on what we see of Jadyn Davis, that you would feel comfortable starting a game this year based on past performance. Keene, Davis Warren, he did start a bunch of games. He did beat Alabama, Ohio State as the starter. And then Bryce Underwood, you're just going to have nothing but hope for. But we'll see what happens. Let's see what you guys think, though. Let's not talk about spring practice. Let's not talk about fall practice. Let's not talk about game 1. 12th game of the year. Michigan's going to beat Ohio State for a 5th straight time, 3rd straight in Ann Arbor. Who will be under center? I'm narrowing it down to Mikey Keene and Bryce Underwood. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'm going to pin this comment right below the video. It'll be the top comment. Go ahead and reply to that one because you might get hit with a YouTube ad break. It's right about that time they put them in here. Go down and answer it. Scroll back up. Ad may be over. Let's go over to the running back position. The Donovan Edwards, and others did not. Michigan had a ton of players, basically all the guys we just showed you. But the Don and Kalel Mullings did not play in the bowl game. So it was over to Michigan's top kick returner and 3rd-string running back for most of the year, Jordan Marshall, who only played in 2 games prior to the bowl game, to be the starting running back against Alabama. Now, he was just getting 3 and 4 and 5 yards per carry, broke off a couple, showed a ton of determination, a ton of grit, was the MVP of that bowl game. And I think because of the familiarity with the program, the coach, the teammates, he is going to come in as your running back 1. But much like quarterback, I think it's kind of a 1A, 1B with Justice Haynes, who was a 5-star 2 years ago. He was a top 30 player, 5-star in the 2023 class, and was the featured running back, kind of a 1A, 1B, though, to start the year with Alabama last year, but didn't really kind of break out and be their main guy. And I just had pulled up the stats a second ago for Alabama, and I think I already lost them, which is fine. But last season, where did it go? Okay, here it is. He started the opener, 4 carries only for 102 yards and a touchdown, but really things dropped off after there. 13 carries next week, but then from there, didn't have another single-digit carry game all of last season. Ended up 3rd on the team in rushing behind their starting quarterback, Jalen Milroe, and the other guy whose name I'm forgetting at the moment, that ended up kind of really being the starter as years went on. So you're getting a high-level talent, someone that's got a ton of highlights out there, scored 7 touchdowns last year, 448 yards rushing on 79 carries. And I think somebody that's going to put together potentially the best 1-2 running back spot in the Big Ten outside of Penn State. So Justice Haynes and, of course, Jordan Marshall. You've still got Benjamin Hall, but look, we haven't really seen him do much outside of the spring game in his several years, 3 years in Ann Arbor. So I think that's the role he's going to stay. I could see him being a guy after next season, maybe grad transfers, heck, maybe even after this spring practice, doesn't stick around if he doesn't think he's going to get much playing time behind these 2 high-level recruits, potential high-level running backs for Michigan this year and likely in 2026 as well. I doubt, Haynes, although he would be a junior, will go pro after this year. So both these guys will be back for multiple years as a 1-2 combo. How about the fullback position? Don't have to spend a ton of time on it. Max Bredesen, the Michigan captain, one of the toughest SOBs of all time for this program. He will be back. And then you've got 2 other players. Eli Owens, some people are excited about, but I don't necessarily think you're going to see a ton of play out of those guys. Max Bredesen's position is the tight end. He's fullback. He's also going to play a little bit at tight end, I am sure. And him just returning is huge, right? You get a leader of the team, a guy who was there for the 3-year Big Ten title, college football playoff, national championship run, kind of bridging the gap between the Mason Grahams and the Will Johnsons and the Kenneth Grants and the ones before them, J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, to this new crop of Bryce Underwood and Jordan Marshall and others that Michigan's going to try and retool and make a run at another national title over the next 3 years. So that is your quarterbacks, running backs, and your fullbacks. We have got a ton more to talk about, but before we do, I've got to tell you about Factor. We're so excited to have Factor back sponsoring the Michigan Football Report. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Well, Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and are ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. You can also lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals. Based on randomized controlled clinical trials with Factor Keto, results will vary depending on diet and exercise. They've got 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, and it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. I said this to Ashley a couple days ago, Jack. So I got my Factor. I returned home from the Super Bowl on Saturday, and I popped one in on Saturday. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to eat a Factor meal. This is great. I'm not asking her to cook for me. I've got a meal for Saturday. I've got another one for lunch Sunday, dinner Sunday, and it was amazing. And although I've got a full-time chef at home, a.k.a. I've been married for, 12 years, something like that, if I was single, Jack, or if I had a wife who didn't like to cook, or, I was, had kids that are on to college, out of high school, out of the house, I would get Factor all the time, right? I get it a lot of times, but it's not every meal because I've got a wife who likes to cook. I absolutely love the meals. They are gourmet meals. You would not know the difference. You heat them up, they come, you put them in the fridge, and you've got your meals for an entire week. Jack, are you using Factor? How much are you using Factor, Jack?
I'm a big Factor guy. I love Factor. Because we got long days here at the office, so I don't have time to cook, so I go with Factor.
No doubt. Jack got himself a lady, but, not married yet, so still has a lot of the meal prep is on him. You can eat smart with Factor and get started at factormeals.com/MichiganChat50off. That code and that URL are going to be down. It's the second paragraph of today's description. It's also going to be down there in the comments. So go down there, click on the link. It is factormeals.com/MichiganChat50off. Use code MichiganChat50off to get 50% off your first box of Factor plus free shipping. Again, MichiganChat50off. That link and that promo code are down. Second paragraph of the description of today's video. Use it, support the show, and get yourself some great healthy meals and start eating right this football offseason. Let's head over to the wide receivers. Some new faces, right? Not on the middle on the right, but how about Donaven McCulley, a big-bodied wide receiver, 6'5". He is the kind of guy Michigan has been waiting for. I really wish you had a guy like this during the J.J. McCarthy era. Just got a Nico Collins-style body, just goes up and gets the 40-yard pass in the end zone. Michigan's really been missing that type of receiver since Nico Collins. It's been about the 6 foot and 5'11" and 6'1", or Ronnie Bell, 6'2" type of guys. Now, there are some off-season concerns because he was great with 48 catches, 644 yards, 6 touchdowns in 2023. But after a couple games in the 2024 season, with a new coaching staff and Curt Cignetti and what they brought coming over from, what was the school he was at, JMU, it didn't work out, and he left the team, okay? So could there be some character concerns? Not sure. Was it just not the right style of offense for him and he just kind of gave up? Maybe that's what it is. Hoping that the structure and the culture and the camaraderie and everything you get with a winning program like Michigan gets him back on track and he can be the number one option, the deep threat option, the red zone option for whoever's throwing the ball for Michigan. A much needed big-bodied wide receiver. Other guys to keep on, obviously Frederick Moore didn't make as much of an impact as a true freshman last year as I anticipated, but I think he will be, from what we know, in the starting lineup and given every opportunity to do that in spring and on to fall. Samaj Morgan's back for a third year. He'll be starting at the slot. How about behind him? Anthony Simpson, a very under-discussed, underrated prospect himself. Much like McCulley, had a really nice year in 2023, right? You see on screen there, 800 yards receiving. He had himself 3 touchdowns, almost 60 catches, but left the program after 2 games. And former UMass head, you come over from UMass, former UMass head coach Don Brown wouldn't discuss it. So I'm not sure if there's any behavioral things. He just had a falling out with the coaching staff, really uncertain. So left that program and then decided to transfer into Michigan. So although we don't have him in the starting lineup, got him as the backup at the slot is kind of how, from the film I've watched, where he would fit in with this Michigan offense. I think he's somebody that may be able to make a bigger impact than expected in this 2025 season. And because Michigan's returning nobody, right? They are returning nobody who did anything catching the ball last year. You see on screen. Samaj Morgan, 27 catches. He's catched the ball 27 times and only have 139 yards. Basically what they're saying is those are all reverses where they toss the ball in front of them so it counts as a catch, or 3, 4, 5-yard bubble screens. Behind him, true freshman Frederick Moore last year. And then Marlon Klein, right? The backup tight end. And then Peyton O'Leary, a walk-on who was like wide receiver number 5 or 6 last year. Lost everything with Colson Loveland, Donaven Edwards, et cetera, et cetera. And then Tyler Morris has transferred. Where did he end up? I think he ended up in Indiana. He ended up in Indiana. So basically, McCulley and Morris swap spots. That 2024 wide receiver group, even with Tyler Morris, was the worst I have ever seen in the 30 years I've closely been watching Michigan football. So as a wee boy in the rural suburbs of, outside of Cleveland, Ohio, rooting for the Wolverines to beat the ass of the Buckeyes in the 90s. This wide receiver group was terrible. It was worse than like the 2008 Rich Rod group. It was worse than any of those kind of bad Brady Hoke groups that still typically had 1 or 2 guys that were making big-time plays. That wide receiver group last year was terrible. I still think Michigan should be going out in the spring when the 15 or 10-day portal opens up in April and see if there's anybody else out there. Use that NIL money to convince somebody to come over, because what the guys on the field this year, unless they have a major step up and get some different coaching, better coaching, I still don't think it is a championship level wide receiver group just yet. But maybe it's coaching. And I talked about this yesterday. Soup Campbell, back with Michigan, right, was the wide receiver coach the entire tenure of Lloyd Carr. And things started off, okay, great. 900 yards with Mercury Hayes, Ty Street, 700, 500. Boom, breaks out in 1998. Tom Brady's his quarterback, 1,000-yard wide receiver. And then that just started a streak, right? David Terrell in 99, 2000. His classmate, Marquise Walker, takes it on in 2001. Even when you had redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore, John Navarre, who wasn't really good that year as the quarterback, 1,100 yards. Braylon Edwards, the Navarre years, 02, 03. Chad Henne, true freshman. Didn't matter who the quarterback was here. Every single year, Soup Campbell had a number 1 wide receiver recruited, ready to step up. Right, Braylon did nothing as a true freshman, was a 2-star recruit. Sophomore year, 2002, he was ready to go. 03, 04 became an absolute superstar with a true freshman quarterback. Jason Avant, same thing in 05. Michigan went to a different style of offense, heavy on the run, some injuries, etc. Mario Manhan took a step back in 2006, but then right back up there, nearly 1,200 yards in 2007. 9 of the last 10 years, Soup Campbell was at Michigan as wide receiver coach. They had a 1,000-yard receiver. And I'll check the records here, but I would guess they've only had maybe in the, 17 years since he's not been with this program, probably had 4 or 5 total, 5, maybe 6 total in that 17 years, 1,000-yard receivers. Him overseeing his former wide receiver, pupil, someone that played for him in Michigan wide receiver coach Ron Bellamy, I think is the right combo of elder statesman and younger coach who was a high school head coach that's kind of just getting his chops wet in his 3rd year at Michigan. I like what I see, and maybe that is what Michigan needs to run the right routes, put the right concepts in there that this team, frankly, was not doing at all last year with Bellamy coaching that squad. Going over the tight end, we saw quite a few of these guys with Colson Loveland being injured, missing a few games throughout last year. Marlon Klein expecting a huge year from him. And I think this tight end combo of Klein and Hansen, we saw them both play in big spots last year, is going to be huge over the next couple years. Zach Marshall right behind them. Everybody thinks big things out of Zach Marshall. So I don't know if they have the most accomplished, clearly not the most accomplished coming into this year, but depth, guys you can rely on, plug and play. This tight end room looks great to me, and they're going to look great for years down the road as Michigan has prioritized and develop the tight end position really for the entire Harbaugh era outside maybe 1 or 2 years. So big time expectations coming from the tight end room over the next several years with the 3 guys we just showed you. So before we get to the offensive line, I'm going to ask you guys this question. I'm putting the number at a simple 30. 30 points per game this season. I can't remember what Michigan was at last year, but I think they finished like 21, something like that, points per game. 30 points per game on offense this year. The end of the season, will we be over or under? Comment below. Let's get the vibes of this Michigan Football Report audience on what you expect from this 2025 Wolverines offense. On to the offensive line. This could change big time. This could change. You've got a lot of guys who performed poorly last year, but let's kind of talk about the expected starters. Snap one, first padded practice, whenever that is, probably end of the first week. Andrew Sprague, Brady Norton, right? So Norton is coming over from Cal Poly. He has 2 years of eligibility. Was a big-time get in the transfer portal for Michigan. Greg Crippen, got him in there as the starting center. Giovanni El Hadi, who started last year and spots in the past couple of years with guys being injured. And then Evan Link, right? Evan Link. We'll talk about the backups here more in a second, but Evan Link is on borrowed time, right? I called him Evan Stink for a little bit last year, Jack. I think he was our whipping boy for much of the first part of the year, and it's like, well, I guess nobody's better, but he got replaced several times last year, and then there was injuries. He got back in the starting lineup, but Evan Link was one of the worst performing offensive linemen I have seen since definitely since Sherrone Moore was the worst offensive lineman we've seen since he was involved in the offensive line. So going back, 4 seasons? And really probably since the last couple of years of Brady Hoke, right? So we're giving it a decade. Evan Link was the worst starting offensive lineman for Michigan in a decade. I think he's on borrowed time. Michigan brought in guys with starting experience, and if they can prove that the step up from Cal Poly to the Big Ten, or from Ferris State, that we'll talk about here in a second, to the Big Ten, then Evan Link's not going to be in the starting lineup for too long. A younger guy, Blake Frazier, Andrew Babalola, the true freshman, or Ty Hayward, right, who's going to enroll coming up in June, won't be part of spring practice. Whenever any of those guys develop, I think that Evan Link is the first guy out of the starting lineup. Sprague, we'll see what happens with him, but I definitely don't think that Evan Link is going to make a big impact. Go back to it one final time for me. I want to just a couple notes on a few of the backups in the 2 deep there, Jack. A couple guys to keep an eye on here, right? So Lawrence Hatter, right? Tatar Hatter. We've got him plugged in as the backup at right guard. Now, I think there's a lot could happen here, right? He has experience playing tackle. Norton, I believe, has some experience playing tackle as well. So things could shift around here. They might want to go for the best players, 5 best players available. There's some conflicting info out there on Hatter from Ferris State. Some people say he's got 1 year of eligibility left. Some articles say he's 2 years of eligibility. Not 100% sure, although this will be his 5th year in college. So I'm guessing it's got to be 1 unless there's some injury stuff in there. But he started both at left tackle and left guard over the last 2 seasons. And Ferris won their 3rd national title in the 4 years he was at that school in Division II. He was a Division II Division II first team All-American last year, and played left guard switched over and played left guard in the national title game, D2 national title game, just last year from the state of Michigan. And I think by fall camp, middle of season, I would bet he's somebody that's kind of pushing his way into the starting lineup. How about this one? It's been very underreported, underdiscussed. Juan Castillo, who last year was the offensive line coach at UCLA. He is now basically the assistant offensive line coach. And the rules have changed, right? Before you had to call these guys analysts. Now you can have 10 coaches, right? But you can also have these assistant coaches. They can officially be on the field now. The NCAA rules have changed. But this is a guy who's been all over the place. And I think he is, much like Soup Campbell to Bellamy, the kind of elder statesman been there that can help a very, very young coach like Grant Newsome get his feet wet and not end up on the hot seat. So go over Castillo's resume really quick. I was with Michigan now, UCLA for 1 year. Prior to that, run game coordinator for the Washington Commanders, tight ends coach for the Commanders, offensive line coach for 2 years for the Bears, was an offensive analyst, if you remember, back in 2019 for 1 year with Michigan because of the John Harbaugh connection. Buffalo Bills O-line coach, Baltimore Ravens O-line coach for 3 years, Baltimore Ravens run game coordinator for a year prior to that. And then you go back, Jack, he was the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2011, 12, and 2012, right? So offensive line coach for the Eagles before that. It's kind of wild. Offensive line coach, tight end coach, NFL defensive coordinator now is helping Michigan because I think, guys, Grant Newsome, we've had our differences over the year. If you go back to 2019, 2018, we did our show on Facebook Live. Grant Newsome, we won't bring that back up. But I think he's in the hot seat. I think he is a hard worker, great attitude guy. Jim Harbaugh loved him, said he could be a politician one day, but probably got elevated a little too fast to the tight ends coach and then now with the offensive line coach. And a lot of rumors out there that Sherrone Moore towards the end of the season, right, 7th, 8th, 9th game, when they got better, was taking over the offensive line and kind of making Newsome his secondary sidekick like he was when he was tight end, his apprentice as the offensive line coach. Moore needed to bring in this adult supervision, okay, in Castillo, and it would not surprise me if Grant Moore went and took a, offensive coordinator job, like a really tiny school or a D2 school, and then maybe he comes back and works with more in the future once he gets his feet wet. But he's a younger guy. I don't know what his age at this point. He's probably about 29, 28, and it just didn't cut it last year. And if this offensive line for a second year in a row, bringing in multiple transfers, multiple guys coming back with starting experience, if it looks as bad as it did the first 7 or 8 games last year where guys looked absolutely lost, you couldn't develop anybody, you couldn't keep a consistent 5 in the starting lineup, I think that Grant Newsome might be told, hey, we don't want to fire you and embarrass you. Why don't you go look for a job and we will be replaced. So he is the one coach I think is on the hot seat. I also think Ron Bellamy, and you see Sherrone Moore want to give those guys the best resources they can, bring in the elder statesmen who have been there, done it for 30 and 40 years. So will he see how it shakes out. That is today's show. Our offensive depth chart leaked, stolen, got spies inside Schembechler Hall, and now I need something from you guys for giving you guys that info. Subscribe to the channel. Must get 30 subscribers on today's show. Got 56 yesterday, so I want to find out what happens. We'll see you guys on Friday. We got another video for you. Till then, go Blue.